work with you on that.
Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm gonna go against my better judgment though, and agree with my two Democrat counterparts. And that we should be capitalizing on the one competitive advantage we have in this state, the sun. I mean, Kirsten, you put it very well. 8.5 hours, is that correct?
8.5 hours.
Of direct sunlight in this state. And there's no reason why we should not be the leader of the world in solar technology and solar energy. My name is Travis Grantham. I'm a conservative Republican running for Congress in the CD9. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Arizona. I was born and raised in Scottsdale. And I'm a husband and a father. My wife and I have 2 daughters, 7 and 4. And I own and operate a company out of the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport that is actually very active in the energy business, and I'll get to that in just a moment. And I've consumed a lot of raw material and energy as a pilot in the United States Air Force. I fly KC-135 in the Arizona Airport, which is a tanker, a large 4-engine platform that goes up and does combat air refueling. So I've seen both the need for domestic energy production in this country and to continue the use of fossil fuels we rely on today. And I've seen that that's not going to last forever. And we have to find alternatives to what we're currently doing, because someday we will run out. I take a little bit more of a free market approach to the problem. Yes, we built, railroads, and we did things years ago that helped this country expand west, and that helped our economy grow, and that really turned us into the one great economic superpower. Those were market-driven, private sector-driven solutions. And it's one thing I look at in the energy industry is if I'm elected to Congress, what can I do for you, the people sitting in this room? And I think the number one thing any one of us could do if we get to Congress is get government out of the way. Because I find it fascinating that we have ideas out there like subsidies, which I disagree with as well, especially in the oil industry and in the solar industry to an extent. Especially with the recent history of things like Cylindro, which I don't know if I should even say that word in here, but I'm going to say it because we have to talk about it. Because as representatives, we go to Washington, and it's great. I'll give you an example. I believe in tax credits for certain industries that are finding new and dynamic ways to produce energy. But it's real hard to go to the Hill and argue for something like that when you've just seen billions of dollars hemorrhaged and no product come of it. And I look forward to the discussion because it's the ideas from the people in this room that will actually drive that discussion in Washington, not politicians. Now, as far as my background goes in energy, the company I own and I have served as chief operations officer at for 8 years, and I actually resigned from to run for Congress. One of the things we do is environmental cleanup. We cleaned up the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico 2 years ago with our aircraft. We were there for 95 days, low level, over the water, working directly with both the EPA and the private sector, the large oil companies, to contain that spill before it was able to come ashore. It highlighted a couple things that have driven me to take more interest in our energy sector. It highlighted that we have environmental regulations in this country that are forcing our producers offshore into deep water, where it's unsafe to actually drill and produce the product. Not much different really than in Arizona, where we have environmental regulations that prevent solar companies from occupying huge tracts of perfectly flat ground because there's either a lizard or a squirrel or a bird that halts the process for years and years and years while there's environmental impact studies conducted. Getting the federal government out of the way, in my opinion, is key. Creating a market where actual private enterprise and the free market can operate and allow the solar industry to compete with others. I'll go back to it again. We have endless sun practically in this state. There's no reason we should not have solar farms all over much of the federal and state-owned land in this state that's available for lease. We graze cattle on it. Why can't we grow energy on it? I'll end with something that I found good out of the Arizona Energy Consortium's charter. And it kind of sums up to me why I'm running. I think why probably all of us are running for this office. And it falls in line with what you all want to see happen. Represent the interests of the members and provide members with the advantages of a more substantial and cohesive voice. That's what you should be expecting and asking of your representative that goes to Washington. Not to create an economy for you to survive and not to subsidize your market so that you can sell the product, but to create the environment, to foster the environment that allows this industry to expand. And that's all I have. I look forward to the discussion.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us here this morning. It's always going to be interesting to listen to us and then be honest with yourself and what you like, what you don't like. Earlier this week, our campaign released our 5-point jobs creation plan, what we think is critical to get this country back on track. Part of that is very germane to what we talked about this morning, job creation in the energy industry. It's certainly includes alternative energy. But before I get into that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and where our campaign's going. And we'll talk about quickly job creation plan and some specifics on energy and alternative energy. So I'm Martin Sepulveda. I'm the Republican candidate for Congressional District 9. I live in a district that's raised here. I'm actually a 7th generation in Arizona. My family's roots in this district really go back to the 1870s when they homesteaded in Tennessee at Rural University. I graduated from Arizona State University. I met my wife there. We raised our family in Chandler. Started my first business there. I was elected twice to the city council, non-consecutive terms. I ended up as not a good politician. I'm a military guy. I enlisted in the Marine Corps when I was 17, right out of teenage year. And I'm now 52 on the Navy Reserve. And I assigned to SEAL Team 17 in Coronado. I'm a combat vet. As a Navy Reserve officer, I've been in 6 different conflicts. Only one wasn't in the Middle East. Okay, part of the first Gulf War. Recently, I completed 4 different tours, 3 in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. I'm a small business owner. I've had my company for about 12 years, development company. Before that, I worked for McCarthy Construction. We actually built this building here. Before that, I worked there in the Department of Commerce. So I've got over 20 years, close to 25 years, of business development experience in the public and private sector. My biggest takeaway from that is this: government doesn't create jobs, private sector. The best government can do, though, is create conditions for success. Reasonable regulatory environment, predictable and competitive tax environment, and get out of the way. But the private sector does what it does best: create jobs, create wealth. Again, the 2 terms I served in the Chandler City Council, non-consecutive terms. I'm not a career politician. The thing I'm proudest there is this: we balanced every budget. In the late 90s, those budgets were $500 million. About $500 million. The last budget I was part of was 2007, 2008, over $1 billion. We balanced those budgets, cash reserves, even lower taxes. The other thing we did, it was critical, is we engaged the private sector. As elected officials, we engaged the private sector. They didn't tell us the best story there. We asked them what they need from us to make their investment better. They told us, guess what? Their first investment was an expansion in Chandler, $2 billion. This last expansion is $5 billion. To date, they spent $15 billion in Chandler and created just under 10,000 primary jobs. I tell you, I created those jobs. I was in the council, part of the team that did that. Well, I'm not but the point is, we engaged the private sector, asked them what they needed, and came back with some things we could do. So kind of going to the jobs, the 5-point jobs plan briefly. The first thing is we want to lower corporate taxes. We all think they're too high. I address all this. I know they're too high. And how do we do that? A lot of ways to do that. But I think initially we look at R&D tax credits, making those better, and when we invest in capital equipment, let's look at some more tax credits there, because it's net new investment. The second thing we all talk about is reducing the regulatory environment, get government out of the way. I think, quite frankly, and we'll get into this a little bit more, the states are responsible for overseeing the environmental regulations, not the federal government. They know they're competing with other states for a big manufacturing plant. Initial cap invests a lot of jobs. They're going to be more competitive. They've got skin in the game. And so I think we need to start pushing down the decisions to the local level when it comes time to decide how we best incent these companies, national or international, to come to Arizona. I think we do that best when we have those decisions in the regulatory environment, make those calls. We're not going to get away from the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act. We're not going to do that. We'll streamline these things. The third point is to eliminate taxes on the middle class. I guess you can find it any number of ways. Our threshold is those that have an adjusted gross income of under $200,000. Why would we do that? On the interest, dividends, and capital gains. Half of the private sector jobs are created by small businesses. 65% of net new jobs in this country are from small businesses, the middle class. We eliminate that tax burden, and guess what I do as a business owner? I get to save more. When I like the market, I get to invest more. Okay, so it's that simple. When you have those big numbers, as far as that many jobs created by the small businesses, we need to look at that seriously. The first point is actually something that we're already doing at SkySong. We need to make that bigger. We need to invest in our entrepreneurs here. The incubator programs they have there, the technology transfer that you're doing right now at SkySong, it's the right thing to do. Plus, to start running up the venture capital. That's what we need. Small businesses. That's the right model. We need to do more of that. The last point in our 5-point plan is exports. You know, products made in the USA should mean something. And so we need to look at that and look at that seriously because the net new jobs are there. So energy independence, well, that takes 5 minutes, 7 minutes. It's got to be a broad range. It's got to encompass everything. We're not going to get away from fossil fuels, but let's include the alternative energy in this equation. Again, it's talking about what we can do with state and federal lands, create a revenue stream for the state right on federal land, the leases, the royalties, and federal lands, split the profit. So if you can incent the private sector to do this, we can look at North Dakota, that model there. There's some great things happening, there's some not so good things happening. It's infrastructure, but it's still creating a lot of jobs, a lot of revenue. The Eastern XL pipeline, we don't want to talk too much about that right now, hopefully in discussion, but it's ready to go. Let's make it happen. We need to get less dependent, not more dependent on the Middle East and the oil there. I've been there. It's not a nice place, very volatile. But we do that with a comprehensive approach to energy. It includes fossil fuels. We can't take nuclear off the table right now. But all of the above that's emerging, and again, I would say it's got to be market-based. The concept is market-based because too much subsidy doesn't lead to a better product at the end of the day. I look for the discussion.
Fortunately for you, Mark, nothing wrong with you enjoying my water. You can drink it. We were fired up. I didn't want to get in your way. I'm Jeff Thompson. I hope you don't mind if I stand up, but I can't. I'm sitting for a half hour. I'm a non-politician. I'm a retired businessman. And I'm not going to try to repeat a lot of what's been said. You don't need to hear it again. And I'm not going to stand up here and tell you I know your business. And I don't think any of us up here probably know your business. But I know business. I was across the street here. It's great to come back in this area. I had one of the corner offices across the street, just on the north side here, for about 8 years during our lease there before we moved. I've been in the financial world for 25 years. I've been retired for 7 years, enjoying my retirement. I have a place in Flagstaff. I typically spend the summers up there. But I think this is a very important election. And I just got irritated watching. And I thought, I don't want to vote for another politician. We've had enough politicians. And I think they've created a real mess. You know, the bottom line is Congress hasn't done its job. And they haven't done their job for quite some time. And we're all paying a price for that. And I'm here to tell you, you may not like hearing this, you hear the doom and gloom. But if you send the right people back, and that's why I'm running, because I'm a successful businessman. I didn't flail at it for a few years. I retired when I was 54, financially independent. I love Arizona. I lived here for 31 years. I lived in Ahwatukee. That whole time I lived in the district. Not all the candidates do live in the district. I do. And I think that's important. I'm going to ask you a question. Let's see if we've got the answer. What's our energy policy in this country? There isn't one. And every time I talk to a group of people, they're frustrated by that. How many people in here think, though, through proper leadership, if I'm running a big corporation, and I was a big shot in a $150 billion corporation, we knew what our vision was. We wrote it down and everybody joined in. We created it together. We knew what our goals were. Everybody knew. We talked about it regularly. This is a big country. This is the greatest country in the history of the world. We don't even know what our energy policy is. We're going in so many different directions. It's a shame. And I'm going to tell you something. This country, we talk about Congress hasn't done its job. We're going to pass $16 trillion in debt. $1.3 trillion a year right now this year is our deficit. When we take in all of your money, all your taxes, and some people talk about income tax, you're taxed 47 different ways. You know, you go drink a beer tonight, you're taxed on that. Go look at your phone bill. Go look at your TV bill. We're taxed every which way but loose. And when you look at all those taxes coming in and all that money, they call it revenue, after we pay the debt, the interest on the debt, not the debt, the interest on the debt, 40 cents out of every dollar, and after we pay entitlements, we've gone through all of that. What's left? What haven't we paid for? The entire cost of the government. All the departments, everything. And I'm telling you something. If we fix this, if you send the right people back, we've got a chance of fixing it now. And there's going to be pain for everybody. You may not want to hear doom and gloom, but I'm going to get to what the good news is for your industry. There's going to be pain for everybody to fix it. If we don't go through that pain, and believe me, I've talked to a lot of people, 95% of the people I talk to say, I know we're going to go through pain, I get it. What do we got to do? But if we don't, if we continue to spend, and if we spend recklessly like Congress has done for too many years, the ship's going to sink, folks, and we're all on it. And if you don't think that's a reality, then I'll talk to you afterwards, because I think most people agree that's the situation. Now, when we talk about recovery, Martin touched on some great ideas. Regulation is stifling. I may not know your business, but I know business, and I know how to take the shackles off. Regulation stifling, we won't go repeat that. Let's talk a little bit about taxes, though, because too often we talk about corporate taxes, and what the common people out there don't realize, they like to put all you small business people together and say, they're making money, tax them. A tax on business is a tax on every person because it costs you more for goods and services. The way you get tax money and revenue to the government so they have more money to spend is by having economic recovery. When you have good economic recovery, more people are working. And I'm telling you, it's not just the unemployment number. I have a lot of friends that are business people, and they're making way less than they've been making. Their incomes are way down, and when your incomes are down, you're paying less money to the IRS. Now, I, for one, feel a little differently. I think this country was founded on the fact that you have a right to the fruits of your labor. And I personally think the government's done a horrible job spending all the money I've sent in, and I've sent the government a lot of money through the years. And I don't think they've done a good job spending it. I got the 1 minute thing, and I always have these problems with these meetings. I give you that day on 1 minute, and I got a lot more material. So, in wrapping it up, if you send someone back there with a good mentality of what it's going to take to fix it, and with focus, and I think the one reason I've been successful is through the years I can focus on what's important, not get distracted. You have to focus on what's important. And if we can get economic recovery, it is so important, like everybody up here said, that we have viable alternative energy. Viable. And if it's viable, we not only need to have a situation where private capital will jump in through venture capital, which is great, but if we can get economic recovery, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't feel strongly that we need to invest in these areas. But first, before any of it can happen, it must have economic recovery. And if we don't get it, folks, it's not going to matter. And it's going to be doom and gloom. So the reason I'm running is because I think that in special times like this, it takes special people to step up, that have been successful, know how to run a government the way it should be run, make tough decisions, so that all you people in here can be as successful as you want to be. So I look forward to the questions. I know I ran over. I always do. Thank you. I'm going to get some water, though. Like this water.
My name is David Shapiro. I'm the current Senate Democratic leader in Arizona and running for Congress as well, the new Congressional District 9. I think something unique about me, I'm born in this district. My dad was born in this district. This district is a place where I'm deeply rooted. I serve about half the district right now between my service in the state Senate and my service in the 10th Union High School District Governing Board. I'm here to talk today about energy policy. I actually agree with Jeff that we don't have a national energy policy. I think where we'll find some disagreement is in what that energy policy should be. Now, I believe that energy policy should be a sustainable one. And sustainability means two things. Yes, one, it means that we have to have renewable energy sources that are sustainable going into the future. But we also have to have environmental protection so we can sustain our world so that my kids and future generations can enjoy the same environment that we've been able to enjoy in our lifetimes. So one of the things I think that's interesting that I've heard so far today is always a great benefit going last. Everyone's going to say what they say here today, but I can tell you a week ago, or last week, we had a debate, and a lot of what we heard from, especially the Republican candidates in this race, or actually only the Republican candidates in this race, is our national energy policy should be drill, baby, drill. And I don't think that is a sustainable energy policy. We actually heard from some of the candidates. I talked about the fact that 100 years from now, we'll probably be using energy technology that doesn't even exist yet today. I talked about the need for investment in research and development, for solar, for algae research, and one of the candidates here today, said my car doesn't run on sun or algae. And so we have to look at a sustainable energy policy. Now I want to tell you, I'm going to talk a little bit today about what the reason I've come around to that point of view. Now I'm not going to tell any of you in this room things that you don't already know, but what I want to show you today is why I've come to this point. So first off, we in Arizona are not living up to our potential of clean energy. We as a state actually produce more energy than we need. And we sell it to other states. Now if we're going to do that, we should do it in a clean way. Because yes, businesses are making profits selling energy to other places, but when we talk about environmental protection, what state gets the pollutants of the fossil fuels that are being burned to create that energy? We do. Yet we don't get the benefit of that energy. So if we're going to produce more energy than we need, we definitely have that much more of an incentive for that energy to be clean. We're falling behind a lot of the states across the country, but especially states in the Southwest. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And also, I think there's some great federal initiatives. There's some great things that we can do as Congress to support clean energy in this country. And I'm going to talk about some of the different financial mechanisms that have advantaged fossil fuel industries that haven't been there for clean energy industries. I want to just talk about the Southwest and our comparisons. Again, I know you all know these things. We have this goal of getting to the renewable energy standard of 15% by 2025. Now that sounds all well and good and looks good on paper, but if you compare us to other states in the Southwest, we want to be way ahead of us by that time. We want to be at 15%. Nevada, next wants to be at 25. Colorado at 30. California at 33. We have to set higher standards for ourselves in this state. Some of the policies that I'll support on the federal level. We talked about free market. We heard a lot today about the free market as a solution for energy in this country. Well, we don't have a free market right now. Right now, we subsidize, and we subsidize heavily, the existing fossil fuel industries. How can we compete in a quote-unquote free market when the traditional energy sources are heavily subsidized? And I'm going to talk about the comparison of subsidy that exists in the clean energy industries in just a minute. We have to ensure that the production tax credit for wind continues and the investment tax credit for solar that's meant to expire in 2016, that continues going forward in order for those clean energy industries to compete. Master limited partnerships. Fossil fuels are able to trade in a group. And so you can invest, you can trade in oil futures. You can't do that with clean energy. How can clean energy compete in the investment market when the fossil fuel industries have that competitive advantage? We also saw the expiration of the Section 1603 grants, which gives a great cash investment, a cash grant to clean energy sources in this country. We've got to extend the 1603 grants. You look at energy production, non-hydro. Of course, hydro is a renewable energy source, but we're pretty much at capacity where we need to be. So taking hydro out of the equation and looking at where we're going and where we've come in the last 10 years on energy, Arizona is in the bottom 4 states in the country in the percentage that's the percentage of our energy generation that's renewable, and that's as of 2011. We're falling way behind. As I mentioned, the 1603 grants. We have to get the 1603 grants back. is a huge, massive investment into our energy infrastructure if we can create jobs in the solar industry, in renewable energy industries. And I think a lot of you have experienced the downturn that we've seen since December. That downturn will continue. You're talking about $283 million that would be invested into our state. We also have to make sure, as I mentioned, that that investment tax credit for solar continues after 2016. Look at how we compare nationally or internationally. Look at renewable energy growth in the United States. It's the red at the bottom. We've grown, but look at how much we've stagnated compared to other nations. Look at Japan, photovoltaic. Look how much they've increased PV in recent years. Look at Europe. Look at the rest of the world. We are failing to compete internationally when it comes to solar, specifically photovoltaic. Now, Arizona, as I mentioned, we produce more energy than we need. Vast majority of that energy comes from fossil fuels, and 90% of those fossil fuels are imported. We bring that into the state, and by the way, that is incredibly expensive. You're talking about $3 billion that has been spent just in Arizona on fossil fuels. Now again, we talk about that free market. Look at oil at the bottom left there, and how much tax incentive they get. Compare that to ethanol, compare that to green technologies in the top right. This is over time how much more has been spent on fossil fuels than on other energy technologies. You may say, well, they've been around for a lot longer. Here's the comparison average by year of how much we spend on fossil fuels compared to alternative energy sources. This is not a free market. In order for us to compete, we have to either say we are not going to subsidize the oil industry, or say that we are also going to subsidize renewable energy sources at the same level, or say we're not going to do any of it. But the model we have right now just won't work, and I think if we're going to create an energy portfolio and an energy policy nationally, it has to include some very logical reasoning that comes from knowing these facts. Thanks for your time.
Do we get a copy of that PowerPoint?
Sure.
Real quick, anybody got a Kia Rondo 4-door silver, company car? Someone lost it. That's your car. Security has it. I'm the salt tanker.
Yeah, do you know the
Beeper on it. Hit the keys and it beep it.
Just one out.
So here's what we're going to do. We have about a half an hour, and I think, we had plans to go ahead with our usual schedule of having committee reports and such, but I think since we have such a great opportunity here, we're just going to forego that and take the next half hour to have a discussion, ask some questions. Thank you so much for your presentations. Those were excellent. So I want to open it up. I don't know, Chris, you want to ask a question to start us off?
Oh, look, everybody's bashful in the room, so I'll start that. Most of you in some way or another have discussed energy independence, security, our dependence on foreign fuels, etc. Which I tend to agree we need to have a more secure energy source here in the US. However, most projects currently that aren't being funded by the federal government are not being funded by domestic sources of capital. China, the Middle East, parts of Eastern Europe are writing checks for infrastructure in the United States. So instead of sending our money overseas to buy fuel, they're owning our assets. How would you address bringing up the financial markets so that they would invest in our new energy future, whether it be nuclear, fossil fuels, solar, wind, geothermal, biomass? Let's take the resource out of the equation for a moment and focus on how you free up those markets so dollars actually flow into this sector, which is in desperate need of it. Who wants to go first?
Again, I think it goes back to corporate tax structure. We need to lower that. We're not competitive. We're talking about energy or anything else. We're not competitive in this country. We need to fix the corporate tax structure. We can do that with tax credits, R&D, capital investment tax credits, the regulatory environment. That's another reason. I'm going to make a disclosure here. I'm a developer. Guess what? I'm moving away from that fun industry I've been in for a lot of years. And guess what I'm investing in? Alternative energy. I might be the only Republican. That actually believes in alternative energy investment. In 1603, I haven't used that 1603 grant. I haven't needed to. It's great the government has that, but at the end of the day, I don't need to look to the government to make the investment make sense for my company. The Okay, so that's the way forward. The quick answer right now, we could do is look at the corporate tax structure. It's not competitive. We look at the regulatory environment that's too burdensome, push it down to the state level. And we do need to look at sustainable energy. I believe in that. Biomass energy is also very interesting. We're always going to produce waste. We have a lot of landfills here. Methane gas. You know, the wind quarters are great. Geothermal is terrific. You know, Abengoa has got what? How big is that plant? Just around 300 megawatts. That's a big plant. So it's here. Photovoltaic, thin film panels. There's a lot of technologies there, but it's got to be market driven. I think the last thing I would say is that when you look at what's happening in North Dakota, there are problems there. It's a boom town based on the oil or the shale they found there. But how can you turn your back on 900 billion barrels of oil is potential there? To compare that to the Middle East, the known reserves in the Persian Gulf are 750 billion barrels. Okay, great. The technology may not be there right now. We'll let the innovators drive that technology. It's got to be part of the solution. The bigger part is sustainable energy, which I believe in, which is our way forward to energy independence. So we can't turn our back on politics.
Let me jump in because I think
Okay, let's start at this end and work our way down. If anybody wants to answer a question, the next one we'll start at David then.
Well, I think I addressed this in my opening statement, which is that we need to invest very seriously in things like tax credits, in things like grants that help support research, development, and innovation. One of the biggest challenges I think that businesses in the United States face when they want to embark in new energy initiatives is that it is risky in our market still. It is still not a safe and secure financial bank. And so in order to help those corporations find a safe financial secure bet, I do think that's where government plays a role, is in the early investment until the industry becomes stable. And then, of course, at that time, when it's self-sustaining and is financially secure, then you lean off these support networks because they're no longer needed. But we don't provide that same kind of investment. I would contrast that with Germany. One of the reasons that Germany has the greatest solar production in the world is because the government of Germany invested. They went 100% in. They said, we're going to do this. And the technology that they've come up with and the results they've come up with have been exciting. Countries like China, which are huge, big, and have they get to choose where they put their capital, and it's not like a democracy. They just decide where they're going to put it. They have an easier ability to move that money around. Our government hasn't made the commitment to these new energy sources, and it needs to do so.
I think Martin raised an interesting point, but if our biggest challenge was the corporate tax rate, then we wouldn't be seeing the kind of investment from other countries coming into the United States. They wouldn't want to be investing here. But we are seeing that. I agree, we need some fixes on when it comes to corporate taxes. We have a 35% tax rate. That is one of the highest rates in the world. But the effective tax is only about 23% because of all the loopholes, because of all of the subsidies and all the things distorting that tax rate, and that's among the lowest in the world. So we do need to fix that system, but that doesn't just mean lowering something that's already, when it comes to the effective taxes, among the lowest in the world. What we have to do is really think about what is our priority. And I agree with what Kirsten just said. You look at a country like Germany, right? They have the sunlight of Anchorage, Alaska. And we have more concentrated sunlight than any other place on the planet of the kind of places that actually deal with this. But they are investing there. There's some days where they're getting half of their energy from renewable sources. In Germany, China, the same kind of thing. They are investing there. We need to be investing here from the federal government, we need state investments. We need to help the private sector do what it does best, which is make those decisions on allocating capital. That was one of the reasons that I believed when I was running for state treasurer again, that Arizona should not be investing its state land trust money and all these kinds of things only in big companies on Wall Street, but we should be looking at the things that are going to help our economy grow, because we are facing a real capital problem when it comes to energy investment, especially in Arizona compared to other places in the Southwest and in the inner Mountain West. But ultimately, and this is maybe a little bit controversial to say, I want Arizona. Yeah, turn on your paper over there. Or turn it off. I'm sure it's been going this whole time. I want domestic sources of capital, but at the end of the day, we live in a global economy where capital is global. I want America to be a place where people from all over the world are coming here and investing here because they know that they are going to get a good return on their investment by investing in renewable energy sources here in the United States of America. Frankly, I don't think that's happening enough. I want us to be more attractive to companies, places and around the world. So they're going to come here and invest here and create jobs because ultimately that's what we care about. The one thing that's not mobile, and capital and everything else, one thing that's not mobile is our people. And the people who are going to be filling those jobs, people who are going to be creating those companies, people who are going to be entrepreneurs, those are the folks that we want to make sure that we're focusing on. And that, to me, at the end of the day, is the most important thing we can really look at.
So, the question, how do we free up the capital? And it's a little bit of a difference of ideology up here. I don't want the government to do any of this. I want you to do this. I want the people in this room to actually take the initiative and make this happen. And I'll use a perfect example of one thing we could do to free up some capital. The company I own is based at Phoenix Gateway Airport. I moved into a 50-year-old historical military building that was part of Williams Air Force Base on what's called a military reuse zone, an MRZ. There are such things in this country as economic development zones, which would incentivize industries like the energy industry from setting up shop in a certain part of the country. That's a benefit. That frees up capital. It frees up capital in my business. It frees up capital in the energy business. Tax incentives. I'm a huge, huge supporter of tax incentives because what a tax incentive does for your energy industry is it keeps the money in your pocket and allows you to reinvest, as opposed to sending the money to Washington and then in the form of a grant, after the laundering process takes place, they put that money back out into the market. That is not the best approach. This comes down to ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, to steal a famous quote. Put it in the hands of the people. If you allow the free market to actually drive this solution, it will increase the productivity and allow more capital to enter the market. More banks will loan money, and more private investors will loan money if they know it does not have to go through this federal government, which I'll remind everybody is $16 trillion in debt and spending 40% more than it takes in.
Real quick, and I
Wait a
already
minute.
let me clear something there. So the 1603 may expire. Hold on. 1603 may expire, but you have 30% of the capital investment going to a solar project. I invest in solar. I've never used 1603 because we are solar. Okay, it's not saying we shouldn't look at these innovative ways to do that, but let's let the market decide what technology. What about geothermal? What about the wind corridor? There's other technologies that we should also be looking at. And the 1603 is one component, very successful, but who wouldn't do that deal at 30% to get their capital investment back? So it may not be market driven, and well, okay, Jeff, you can have the floor. Tell us about 603.
I said one word that's a key here, and it's viable. This is a free country. It's a free market. And think about it from the consumer standpoint. They should have the freedom to look at all of your products and determine which one's viable for them. If you want to spend more, I do. I bought some green energy things that I know I'm not recovering my money very fast. That's my choice as an American to do that and have that freedom. We want that protected. You have to create a product that is attractive to the American people, and they're looking, especially the younger generation, is what's viable. Let's talk about oil for a minute, because a lot of people have said, oil, gosh, they're getting all this government subsidy. How many of you own your own company? Any of you own your own company? Okay. So let's say that you're having a difficult time. Would you go take your customer that gives you the most money, and would you do something to discourage them from paying you money? You wouldn't do that in a minute. Do you know how much money the government takes in taxes from the oil industry? Do you understand what you're up against? It's dollars and cents. Who knows how much the oil industry pays a month in taxes? Anyone? Over $20 billion a month. Do you think they're going to take things away from them? That's one of their best customers. Congress has failed. Congress has a huge appetite for spending. They are not going to go after those people. And if you think they are, You think you're going to take these things away? That's not going to happen. You're living in a dream world. What you're going to have to understand is oil's here to stay. There's going to be more drilling. And the other thing you better understand is, and I hope somebody in this room maybe has the technology to produce maybe a hydrogen automobile that makes sense because it's the most abundant element on the planet. But you know what? If hydrogen made sense and it was viable, everybody started to buy it, what would happen to the price of gasoline? No one talks about this. What would happen to it? 69 cents a gallon again? And guess what? When it goes down to that, there's going to be a lot of people that have freedom to say, you know what? I'm getting a big SUV again. I'm going to run it on. And as an American, you have that choice. That's why we came here. That's what I love about this country. I want choice. I don't want the government to tell me what to eat. And I'm a healthy guy and I work out 5 days a week. But what I do shouldn't impact you. I don't drink. But I don't think none of you should drink. And if I don't own a gun, I don't think none of you should own one. It's freedom. That's what made this country great. And it comes to the same thing in your industry. Come up with a good, viable product. You have that freedom in this country. It's what made it great. If you think you're going to get money from the government to have all these ideas, never until we have economic recovery are you going to get it, folks. That's the reality of it all. And you better send somebody back there that understands business and knows how to move this thing forward, or it's going to be a tough road to hoe. So thanks. That's what you wanted to say anyway.
Give us the 1603 discussion.
Okay, where do I start?
What was the question?
So let me start just by saying, wow. Let me start just by saying, I think Jeff is right. If we have vehicles that can run on other energy sources, we should put them out there in mass production and have them compete with oil. But we do. That day is today. We already have them, but they can't compete with oil. Now, why can't they compete with oil? Jeff made another great point, and that is oil is a big contributor to federal revenues, right? And so there's a lot of folks in Washington who feel like they owe oil, just like there's a lot of folks in Washington who feel like they owe corporate America. A lot of folks in Washington feel like they owe the wealthy, and so that's why Washington serves those people. He hit the nail on the head. The difference between Jeff and I is I don't want that to continue. I don't think that's how our system should be structured. And so that's a big difference between us. Now getting to the question. Getting to the question. First of all, I thought it was ironic that Chris asked this question about foreign investment because we had to import Chris from Australia to bring his technology, his project. I mentioned something in my presentation I'm surprised no one else mentioned, and that is when it comes to investment, those master limited partnerships that the fossil fuel industry are able to take advantage of and that investors are able to use as a financial mechanism doesn't exist for other energy sources. I think a great thing we can do to get everybody to invest in renewable energy sources is to be able to bundle that financial product in the same way that the fossil fuel industry has been able to do for years. You know, we also
you'll sell it.
All right,
It's not going to sell.
Stop talking,
But you have to understand economics.
Yeah.
It has to be viable. So,
Guys. Excuse me. Let that speak, please.
So one of the other things that we can do to make renewable and green energy sources more viable is that research and development that Kirsten was talking about. The more research and development we do, the more cost efficient it becomes. I'll tell you one slide I took out because I knew I was going to run up on my 7 minutes. One slide I took out was the cost of photovoltaic per kilowatt hour and how much that has declined year after year after year after year. It's become so much more efficient. The technology that Chris is working on, this is incredible, a passive solar technology that is as simple as physics. And so we have to look at these very, very interesting projects that are coming up in research and development that are cost viable, but can't compete because the fossil fuel industry has the advantage. They have the advantage because of the subsidies they've received over decades, and they have the advantage because they're able to put together a financial product that none of the other energy sources are able to do, which is why we have to wait for foreign investment in some of our renewable energy technologies because they're the only ones that get it. One, because they're already doing it, and two, because they don't get the subsidies either way, whether it's oil or renewable, and for them, they get this, that renewable energy sources are a great investment.
I'd like to ask a question that gets away from energy down to more of an underlying issue. You're all passionate in your beliefs. You all want what's best for this country. You all have different views about how to get there. Some very liberal, some very conservative, some this way, some that way. And you all basically reflect what we're seeing in Washington, D.C., which is we can't have a reasoned discussion. We just have an ongoing dispute. How do we get past that? If you all say, you know, we really need to do something now, you know, the times that are critical, we can't afford another 10 years of argumentation and the adoption of positions that are basically held to get the people elected. How do you get rational discussion back in Washington, D.C.?
And starting and David with this, yeah, 30 seconds or less and thereabouts for everybody.
So we have to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. We can have these kinds of disagreements, but we have to be able to sit at the table and talk about what makes sense. That's something I've been successful at doing in the legislature. In my first 2 years in the legislature, I was in the minority party, the youngest member of the legislature, serving in the lower chamber. And I was still able to get bills passed because I found people who had shared values on the other side of the aisle that I could work with to get things done. We need people who have that kind of experience serving us in Washington.
When do you ever get in a room with a group of people, 6 or 7 people, and have unanimous agreement? You don't have that around your dinner table at night. And I think that's why you have to look at people that have been leaders in the past. You have to know how to lead people. You have to know how to climb inside somebody else's head and have that experience. And let me tell you how you get that. That comes with age. That comes with life's experiences you go through. I can't tell you how many meetings I've been in, corporate meetings. And we started off, and I'll tell you what, it didn't look like anybody was going to come to any agreement. Reasonable minds usually prevail. You have to be able to bring things to a logical foundation and build from it. And yeah, Congress, I'm telling you, the problem we have, most people go back there, and as soon as they get elected, you know the first thing on their mind? They're going to get reelected. You know, one of the things I put on my website is I said that I'm going to introduce legislation. If you run for the House of Representatives, you can only raise $100 grand, and that's all you can spend in your campaign. And Senate free. You know why I said that? Because the more money you collect, the more people that think you own something. And that's a problem. And these guys come back from Washington, D.C., and they've got 7 figures in their war chest.
Okay.
Okay? You can't think about it. 7 figures in your war chest. You're not going to get things done.
Okay, to answer the question, you people just, my background is in 2 non-consecutive terms. And so I would think right now the overarching problem in this country is our deficit spending in the budget. We've got to fix that. People on both sides of the aisle that are in Congress right now, running for Congress, Republicans, Democrats, and others, they said that this is a problem. So my number 1 priority in Congress is to balance the budget and stop this deficit spending. Find those people who have already committed to that in the race and already in public office serving, and just make it happen. That's our number 1 goal. So I identify the overarching goal as Americans, not Republicans, not Democrats, not Libertarians, and drive to that goal. And knock out the partisan rhetoric, because it doesn't matter. We're going broke. Okay? It affects all of us.
But the question is, how do you knock out the partisan rhetoric?
Well, just what I said. You identify those people who said, look, balancing our budget, stopping deficit spending, reducing it, that's the goal. Let's get there. In my view of the world, it's attacking the debt. That's got to be priority. I can do it with balanced budget amendment. Both Republicans and Democrats said that's our goal. Okay, you said that in your campaign trail. You've said that since you've been in Congress. Let's make it happen. That may not get you reelected. So what?
Okay.
Yeah, hold people accountable. When you do that, everyone in this room can do that because you're voters. Vote. Don't complain if you don't vote. Because, you know, people are getting sent to Congress, Republicans and Democrats. You don't need to get sent. Ask the tough questions. I'm an evil Republican. I don't think those subsidies should look like that. And I mean, I'll say that all day long. And a lot of people on the right will say, holy cow. But you know, that's nothing but an artificial inflation of the price. It's just a driver of that type of product. Take it away. Take it away from everybody. Make everybody compete on the same level. So I think you just got to look for honesty in your candidates. You got to send people back there who you think will actually work with folks, regardless of what the letter after it is.
Yeah, well, all due respect, kind of disagree with the premise of the question. I don't think partisan rhetoric is the problem we're facing, and the very real problem we're facing in Washington. I think you look back over the course of American history, and you go back to the debates of Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson, they were going at each other tooth and nail. The difference is that over the course of American history, we've had people who actually got things done and actually moved it all forward, and that's the problem we're seeing right now. And that is because people are locked into ideological positions that they are unwilling to break out of. And I've actually been pretty heartened, much more so than I thought so coming here today, about the conversation we've had. Because I think there's been more agreement up here than I expected going into it. And we, of course, are going to have our differences.
I don't mean to be argumentative, but my point was we have, not that we not have partisan rhetoric, we have partisan gridlock.
All right, I thought you said rhetoric, so we, of course, have our differences here. But I think the way you break out of that gridlock is you have people who are unwilling to accept a system where people are dug into right warfare, dug into their ideological talking points, and are willing to break out. I think you've had myself and probably some of the other Democrats up here talk about market forces, not just government decisions, but really letting the free market work. That's different than what people expect. You hear Travis and probably some of the other folks saying we need to get rid of some of these subsidies. Now, the Tea Party Republicans there, in Congress, they see that as a tax increase. But you've had some people step forward and say, I'm willing to take that on. That, to me, is how you break free of the gridlock. That's what I saw in the Clinton White House when we balanced the budget with Newt Gingrich and all those folks working with Elizabeth Warren. I think you can get things done if you're willing to break out of that.
Thank you. I actually think you've asked the most important question of this entire campaign, and I'm always grateful when someone asks this question. My own experience in 7 years of the Arizona legislature is that, particularly as a member of the minority party, that you can only solve problems when you have relationships with people. And I think the number one most important thing to do when elected to Congress is to identify individuals who have the power and the ability to influence others' decisions and form meaningful, authentic, trust-based relationships with those individuals. Because once you have that, then those individuals will trust you when you come to them with an idea. And together you can find solutions that neither of you would have anticipated. Now that is just purely from my experience over 7 years. I actually wrote a book back in 2009 called Unite and Conquer, where I tell the story of how I learned how to do this and how we've done it successfully in the Arizona legislature. And that strategy, that way of living, it's not really a strategy, it's just a way of living, to form relationships with people, authentic friendships, and then utilize that bond that you have to get things done, allows you to be so much more successful. I've never had the pleasure of serving in the majority, but I have often said that if I ever do serve in the majority, I will behave in the same way as I did in the minority, which is always reaching across the aisle, finding people to make friends with, and solving problems. That's how I passed nearly 20 pieces of legislation in the last 7 years, and that's possible.
We're getting close on time, so we're all happy to stay afterward and what have you, but let's have one more question now.
Can I have a quick comment?
Actually, should lady in the front's been.
Mine's so simple.
Done.
So this is a simple question. I guess it's great to hear. And I heard from the two of you, I'm much more the type of person that believes a lot of politicians talk and talk, but they don't necessarily walk the walk. So you two invest in alternative energy. How many of you have solar or investment on your house? And investing in portfolio?
I've done commercial scale stuff, and that's what I'm doing.
Well, I don't have any money to invest. I have solar, we don't have hydro. That's all I can afford.
Simple question.
Thank you. Look, if this was such a quick one, then
It's just a little comment, because there was mention of Celinda earlier. I just like to keep things in perspective. All investments, whether it's technology and development or banking or anything else, no investment is without risk. Given the size of the economy, the Celinda debacle is not statistically significant. And I believe that there's more money lost each year in unproductive oil and natural gas wells and failed spy satellite launches than we may have lost in Celinda. So we really need to keep things in perspective when we talk about it.
all right, no need to respond to that one. Because it was only a comment. Kurt, do you have one?
Yeah, well, this should just take like a 1 sentence answer.
That's all you've got, right?
And it's more geared towards Republicans, I think. All of you talked about the importance of independence of fossil fuels, foreign independence, and it's a limited resource. But just, I want to know your opinion on the significance or the reality of the impacts of fossil fuels on climate change. You could say if it is significant or it is reality. Start with the Republicans.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, I'm not a
110.
scientist, and I don't pretend to be. I'm a businessman. And I've read a limited amount of that. And you know what? The reality of the situation is, it really doesn't matter what I think. The jury's out, and people are pretty much split on it. And we don't know. The reality of the situation is, we really don't know. No one is 100% sure. There's signs both ways, and that's the reality of the situation.
That was 8 sentences. I think I'm not too. So, we can't get off the fossil right now. I think that's a fact. It does add something to the atmosphere. I'm not a scientist. But again, my approach is everything. Everything, solar, geothermal, biomass. We need to look at everything and make a comprehensive energy solution. That's what gets us away from dependence on oil. That's commitment.
I don't believe it. My turn?
Yes.
I don't believe the impact is severe as it's said to be. We live on a panel that's billions, a planet that's billions of years old. We've had ice ages, we've had volcanic eruptions, we've had all these things go on. We've been industrialized in this nation and in this world for about 100, maybe 20 years. I'll take it back, say 150. To think that we could have the massive effects that are being reported based on science that's not always accurate, and I don't care what side they're trying to feed, I think is a little bit outlandish.
Well, thank you for actually answering the question.
The Democrats are really interested in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not a scientist either, but I've spent a lot of time on this issue, and I've worked with Vice President Gore a lot on it. I'm not a scientist. I know the Earth is round. I know it goes around the sun. I know that there's evolution, and I know that what man is doing and fossil fuels are doing is affecting the climate of our planet.
Climate change is real and it's making it worse.
David?
Yeah. We had a legislative state capitol who said the world is 6,000 years old. Digest that for a second. The world is 6,000 years old, and man's been around for all of it, and nothing bad has happened based on man causing anything, and therefore this can't be a problem. That's ridiculous. How long have we actually been burning fossil fuels? Look at the impact it's had on climate change. It's very clear. I challenge anyone to find a scientifically cited study that says otherwise.
Okay.
Al Gore's network went from what?
Okay.
All right. Again, thank you all for being here, sharing your thoughts. Pretty